I never imagined my biggest fail would lead to this life-changing triumph. I will never forget the day everything fell apart. The air was thick with tension. My heart raced, pounding against my ribs like a caged animal. I stood there, trembling, my breath hitching as I stared at my shattered dreams. Everything spiraled out of control that morning. I was supposed to give the presentation of a lifetime. Instead, I found myself exposed in front of my colleagues, a cruel smirk on my boss' face piercing my confidence. I could feel my cheeks flame as my words faltered. The silence was deafening, broken only by the rustle of my notes slipping through my fingers, scattering like the pieces of my shattered self-esteem that I had always been the overachiever. My family, my friends, everyone expected me to shine. My mother's voice echoed in my head, a mix of pride and pressure, "You can't be average, Emma." But that day, I felt anything but exceptional. My hands trembled as I tried to regain my composure. Instead, tears pooled in my eyes, blurring the harsh fluorescent lights above me. Everyone watched, an audience frozen in judgment. I could see their faces, some averted their eyes, others whispered behind concealing hands. I felt the weight of their disapproval like a heavy cloak draped over my shoulders. Even my best friend, Sarah, stood among them, her expression a mix of sympathy and mild embarrassment. My heart ached at that knowledge. It felt like I was standing on a stage, exposed and vulnerable, every flaw carved into the spotlight. As I stumbled through the remainder of my presentation, I felt an unexpected jolt, an ice-cold rush of shame swept over me. The words I needed eluded my grasp, lost in the ocean of my anxiety. Then, in an instant, the room erupted with laughter. My biggest fear was no longer a terrifying thought, it had become my reality. I wanted to melt into the floor, to disappear from the weight of their scorn. The humiliation left me breathless. In my mind, I thought this was it, my worst moment. Little did I know, this moment of failure would propel me into a journey I never anticipated. Would I find the strength to rise from the ashes? Or would this defeat define me? Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The days that followed felt like walking through a dense fog. I could barely see ahead, everything was obscured by the embarrassment that lingered like a cloud. My boss didn't waste any time in the aftermath. He summoned me to his office, where I braced myself for the inevitable reprimand. His words cut through me sharper than I had expected. "You need to show some resilience, Emma. This is not just about one presentation, it's about how you recover from setbacks," he said, leaning back in his chair with a smirk that set my teeth grinding. His statement echoed in my mind long after I left. Resilience felt like a distant concept, one that belonged to people who didn't crumble under pressure, not someone like me. At home, I plopped onto the couch with a sludgy heart, arms crossed tight around my knees as if I could hold together the wreckage of my spirit. The screens in my apartment flickered in and out of focus, reflecting the chaos that had taken residence in my feel. I watched the news as the anchors talked about the world moving on, infinite chances, and dreams rekindled, but for me, everything felt dark and heavy. Just as despair threatened to swallow me whole, I received a text from Sarah. "Can we talk?" she wrote. Normally, I would have welcomed our chats. But on that particular evening, the thought of facing her pity felt unbearable. Yet, as the darkness lingered and the house felt unbearably quiet, I reluctantly agreed. The cafe we met at was buzzing with laughter, the aroma of fresh coffee and baked goods enveloped me, but none of it could shake off the chill settling in my bones. Sarah looked radiant, her eyes sparkling with warmth as she slid into the seat across from me. The sweet familiarity was a comfort I desperately craved. "Hey, how are you really doing?" she asked, her voice a gentle reminder that I wasn't alone, even if I felt that way. I wanted to tell her how deeply ashamed I felt, how I was drowning in a sea of self-doubt. But the words were trapped, weighed down by the fear of burdening her. "Fine," I managed, forcing a smile that felt foreign on my face. "She didn't buy it, of course," her brow furrowed in concern. "Emma, come on. You don't have to wear a mask with me. I saw what happened, and it was tough. But you know, I want you to know you're not alone." She paused, her eyes glimmering with unwavering support. "Remember when you helped me study for that exam? You wanted me to succeed so badly, and it mattered. You mattered." That I felt something crack inside me, a small wave of warmth spreading where there had been only ice. "Thank you," I whispered. It was a small gesture but a significant lifeline. And for the first time in days, a flicker of hope kindled within me, but as we spoke, the weight of my failures bore down again. "I just don't know how to bounce back from this," I confessed. Sarah reached across the table and took my hand. "You are stronger than you think, Em. You just need to find a way to channel this, find something that ignites your passion again." "Passion? It feels so far out of reach right now," I sighed, pulling my hand back as doubt crept in. But with every passing second, I felt a strange resilience weaving its way through my thoughts. Maybe my moment of failure could indeed become a stepping stone, a part of my story rather than the entire narrative. That glimmer of clarity vanished, however, when I reached my apartment. There, the unanswered knocks of my inferiority echoed in my mind, reminding me that change would never come without courage. As the days slid by like pages turning in a book, I took the first step and signed up for a workshop on public speaking. The thought sent a pulse of anxiety through me, yet alongside it was the tiniest trace of excitement. I read through the details multiple times, my finger lingering on the words, "Overcome your fears." Perhaps, just perhaps, I might find the strength Sarah believed I had. But after signing up, as I opened the door to my apartment, a letter fluttered to the ground. It looked official. My heart sank as I recognized my company's logo. The words jumped off the page. "Due to recent performance issues, your position is under review." My stomach twists in immediate panic. I didn't have a safety net to fall back on, and my failure was rearing its ugly head once again. That I stared at the paper in disbelief. The flicker of hope fueled by Sarah's kindness felt as fragile as glass, teetering on the edge of breaking just like everything else in my life. What was I going to do now? I didn't just have to confront my fear of failure, I had to fight for my livelihood. As I crumpled the letter in my fist, my heart hammered in my chest, the weight of hopelessness once again descended, a reminder that the path to triumph was paved with countless defeats. Would I have the courage to face this new challenge, or would I allow the fear of failure to dictate my future? The following days were consumed by a restless tide of anxiety. Each waking moment seemed to pulse with urgency, each tick of the clock a reminder that the deadline for my performance review loomed over me like a storm cloud. I wandered through the office as though I were a ghost, invisible to my colleagues who exchanged casual banter, their laughter echoing hollowly in my ears. The slip of paper tucked in my bag had turned from a simple piece of correspondence into a weight I couldn't shake. Sarah was my lifeline through this murky time. She continued to check in daily, sending motivational texts that lifted the corners of my lips, if only for a moment. Yet, despite her unwavering support, I felt the burden of my impending uncertainty press heavily against my chest. I wanted to ask her for help, to lean on her and admit my fears, but the words remained lodged in my throat. One gloomy afternoon after a particularly grueling day, I found myself drowning in self-doubt while sitting in a warm little cafe, nursing a cup of tea. The air was thick with the scent of baked bread and spices, but even that comforting atmosphere could do little to ease the turmoil bubbling inside me. Just as I was about to plunge headfirst into despair, a soft voice interrupted my spiral. "Mind if I join you?" A woman, slightly older than me with a gentle smile and an aura of kindness, stood at my table, her hands wrapped around a steaming cup just like mine. Caught off guard, I stammered, Sure. Of course." She slid into the seat opposite me, her presence surprisingly soothing. "You look like you could use some company," she said, her voice lilting with warmth. I had never been particularly good at conversing with strangers, but something about this woman coaxed my truth to the surface. It's been a tough few weeks, I admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. Her brow furrowed in concern. I completely understand. I had a rough patch last year, lost my job and thought my world was ending. But it turned out to be the best thing that ever happened to me. I blinked, unsure of how to respond. Was it possible that someone could emerge from such darkness into light? How did you? I trailed off, suddenly desperate for her wisdom. By finding something that sparked joy again, she replied, her eyes twinkling as if recalling a cherished memory. I began volunteering at a local shelter. The people there, they taught me more about resilience than I ever learned in a corporate setting. For the first time in what felt like eons, I began to feel a flicker of hope take root in my heart. That's incredible, I said, leaning forward. I'm actually trying to overcome a fear of public speaking and I signed up for a workshop. The woman clapped her hands together in delight. That's fantastic. See, you're already on that path. It's all about embracing the journey. Your failures can lead you to places you never thought you could go. Her words wrapped around me like a warm hug, but amidst the comfort, a pang of distress echoed with the thought of my upcoming performance review. I knew the stakes were high. What if I had to face the harsh reality of being let go? Would I still be able to embrace this newfound venture if the ground beneath me gave way? As we shared stories and laughter over steaming cups, I discovered that the woman, who introduced herself as Holly, was a former marketing executive turned life coach. At first, I felt skeptical, sitting there with my doubts and uncertainty, but her conviction was tangible. She prodded deeper, asking questions that urged me to confront my fears head-on. It's not just about public speaking, it's about reclaiming your voice, your power, she insisted, passion radiating from her. What holds you back is not your failure, but the meaning you give to it. The more we talked, the more I began to see the patchwork of vulnerabilities I carried. I didn't need to pretend I was resilient, I just had to accept that I was a work in progress, caught in a wild dance of fear and hope. Eventually, our conversation trickled to a close as the cafe began to empty. As I stood to leave, Holly placed her hand on my arm. I believe in you, Emma. You are capable of more than you even realize, but you need to show up for yourself. Meet me here next week. I can help you find your voice. My heart swelled at her offer, but lingering hesitation crept in. What if I failed? I'll think about it, I murmured, even though the impulse to accept danced tantalizingly just out of reach. As I walked home under the flickering streetlights, a warmth pulsed in my chest, kindled by our conversation. Perhaps there was a glimmer of possibility after all. But just as I had begun to embrace hope, my phone buzzed with a notification. My boss had scheduled a meeting tomorrow afternoon. The message sent a chilly wave of anxiety tumbling through me, cooling the fiery spark of optimism I had just begun to embrace. I stood frozen on the sidewalk, reality crashing down with the weight of its implications. Would my moment of clarity shatter once again, or was I ready to face whatever came next? I closed my eyes and clenched my fists, determination igniting yet again, although shadows of uncertainty coiled tightly around my heart. Tomorrow would either break or mold me anew, but I had to prepare for the truth no matter how grim it might be. The calming belief that failure didn't have to be final lingered at the edge of my thoughts, even as a sense of dread tightened its grip on me. That night, sleep eluded me like a specter flitting just out of reach. The images of my impending performance review haunted me, taunting me with insidious whispers about my worth. Each time the clock ticked, the sound resonated like a drumroll heralding an uncertain fate. I shifted restlessly in bed, replaying Hollis' encouraging words, but they dissolved under my mounting fears. Would I crumble before my boss, or silently endure yet another blow to my fragile sense of self? Morning seeped into my consciousness, the light filtering through my curtains like a warning siren. I pulled myself out of bed, the heaviness of dread sitting on my shoulders. The likelihood of success seemed as distantly unattainable as the sun hiding behind a wall of clouds. I still couldn't shake the warmth Hollis' encouragement instilled, even though the chill of anxiety held me captive. As I dressed, I caught my reflection in the mirror. My eyes seemed different, holding the weight of determination beneath the veil of worry. I made my way to the office, the city bustling around me, a chaotic testament of life moving forward as I stood still. The world continued, but I felt as though time had placed me in a waiting room, suspended between past failures and future potential. When I arrived, Sarah was waiting for me outside the elevator, her smile a bright beacon. "Hey! You've got this, you know. Just breathe," she said, her blue eyes shimmering with sincerity. But even as she spoke, I felt small, like the walls of the office were closing in on me, clutching at my throat. "Thanks, Sarah," I replied, my voice betraying more anxiety than I intended. They'll try that. We stepped onto the floor, and I could sense the energy shift, the usual clatter of keyboards and idle chatter around me muffled by the rush of my heartbeat. I spotted my boss' office door slightly ajar, a mere threshold separating anxiety from judgment. For a fleeting moment, I considered escaping to the restroom or even calling in sick. But then, like a gentle push that steadied my resolve, thoughts of Hollis' belief in my potential flooded my mind. The notion that embracing vulnerability could lead to growth resonated within me. I moved, a hesitant step forward that echoed in my chest. As I approached my boss, I spotted my colleague Mark, who often wore the mask of indifference. He leaned against the wall, an easygoing expression playing on his features, and caught my eye. "Hey, Emma. You ready for the review? Just remember, it's only one piece of the puzzle," he said, attempting to lift the weight of my worries with mere words. "Thanks, Mark," I managed to say, surprised by his unexpected kindness. His casual attitude, albeit brief, reminded me that perhaps I was not as alone in this struggle after all. When I finally stepped into the small space of my boss' office, there was an unsettling silence that enveloped us. Richard leaned back in his chair, his demeanor stoic and unreadable. The murmur of office life faded into the background, and I felt like I was floating, separated from reality. "Emma, thank you for coming in. I appreciate your hard work and dedication," he began. My heart raced as I prepared myself for the inevitable critique, the deflation of my confidence. "Let's discuss your performance." With every word he delivered, I braced myself against an ever-growing tide of anxiety. I knew I needed to anchor myself to the present momento, try to use the strategies Holly had suggested. I took a deep breath, allowing its warmth to fill me, pushing down the burgeoning wave of fear. It wasn't long before he transitioned into discussing feedback from my recent projects. I prepared for the impending storm of criticism but instead found myself thrown by what came next. "Overall, your contribution has been strong, but I do believe there are some areas for improvement. However, we all have our strengths," he continued, his voice steady. The initial disappointment tightened my chest as he delved further into the facets I could refine, but rather than relinquishing hope, something shifted. I felt the stirring of resolve within me. Fueled by a spark ignited during tea with Holly, I spoke up softly. "I appreciate your feedback. I'm aware that public speaking is a weakness for me, but I've signed up for a workshop to address that." For the briefest moment, his eyes flickered with surprise. The corners of his mouth turned up slightly, more a shift of acknowledgement than agreement. "I'm glad to hear that you're taking initiative, Emma. Keep working at it. I trust you are capable of turning this around." With those words, I was presented with a new possibility, a chance to rewrite my narrative. The meeting concluded, and as I walked out, the oppressive fog that had settled within me began to lift. Moments later, Sarah's buoyant smile greeted me outside the office door. "I knew you could do it," she beamed, a proud light illuminating her face. I couldn't help but return her smile, a mixture of relief and hope simmering within me, but before I had a chance to expound on the meeting, we were interrupted by a looming figure, a new manager bursting onto our floor with the kind of energy that cut through the atmosphere. I recognized him immediately from company meetings, but not the practices that accompanied his arrival. "Emma, right? I've been hearing good things about your work," he exclaimed, extending his hand. The warmth of his handshake surprised me. "Thank you," I stammered, stunned. But as he continued speaking, the thrill of possibility was abruptly pierced by his next words. "I'm thrilled to see fresh talent. We've got exciting changes underway, and you might just be the perfect fit for the new project I'm heading if you're willing to step out of your comfort zone." while a rush of adrenaline surged through me, so did a familiar sensation fear. The invitation to step into a new role pulled me in two opposing directions. I longed to embrace the chance, yet the weight of my previous failures clamped down firmly. Just as I began to formulate a response, my phone buzzed in my back pocket. I pulled it out, only to find an unexpected message from Holly. "I found an opportunity that might interest you. Can we talk?" Caught between the promising opportunity and the flickering doubt in my heart, I stood frozen, tethered to the threshold of fear and possibility. The path ahead was unclear, but as I locked eyes with the new manager, a spark ignited within me. Would I affirm the progress I'd embraced or shrink back? The choices weighed heavily in my mind, but there was no doubt. Life had just presented me a crossroads beyond belief, and the direction I chose could change everything. I stepped away from the new manager, the loud pulse of my heart drowning out the bustling chatter around me. Both excitement and fear coiled tightly in my chest, a bittersweet reminder of the uncertainty that had marred my journey thus far. Moments ago, I had felt a flicker of hope reignite after my meeting with Richard. Now, it threatened to extinguish under the weight of this unexpected proposition. "Emma? You still with us?" Sarah's voice cut through my fog of uncertainty. Her expression was a curious blend of curiosity and concern, prompting me to fully return to the present. "Yeah, sorry, just processing," I replied, unable to keep the hesitancy from creeping into my voice. That was quite the introduction. She chirped, though her eyes betrayed concern. "What did he want?" "It's about a new project and he thinks I'd be a good fit," I admitted, cautiously weighing my words. "But I don't know whether I'm ready." "Hey, that's a compliment. You're ready for this, Emma. You've made strides. Besides, what have you got to lose?" Her encouragement hung in the air like dappled sunlight, but the darkness of my doubts didn't retreat easily. "I don't want to get in over my head, or end up embarrassed again, you know." The words spilled out before I could catch them. As I wrestled with my fears, I recalled a moment during my meeting with Richard. The flicker of acknowledgement when I spoke of my workshop commitment had felt valuable. But could I truly transition into something more than just the woman who cringed at the thought of public speaking? "I get that," Sarah said gently, her voice a comforting guide through my spiraling thoughts. "But if you keep avoiding risks, you'll never see how far you can go. Look at how you faced Richard. And besides," she continued, leaning closer to me, "whatever this opportunity may be, it could be your chance to grow." The gravity of her words weighed on me, and in that moment, a thin thread of strength pulled taut within my chest. But just as I felt the breath of resolve surge through me, my phone buzzed again. It was Holly, and I caught just a glimpse of her text. "Can you meet me? There's something I urgently need to share." "Sorry, give me just a second," I murmured, fumbling to type a quick reply. "Is everything cool between you and Holly?" Sarah's inquiry hung momentarily in the air, grounding me to a reality I often found respite in, yet now felt fraught with unanswered questions. "Yeah, I mean, it's just complicated," I stammered. "I know she believes in me, but sometimes the pressure is real." "I get it," Sarah said. "But remember, she's rooting for you, and maybe you should hear her out before making a decision." "Fair point," I replied, though an uneasy tendril of doubt snagged in my throat. I glanced back at the new manager, who now animatedly conversed with others on the floor, and a quiet dissonance churned within me. "I should talk to Holly first," I said finally, starting to feel the weight of her urgency. It was odd to balance both this newfound opportunity and my friendship with Holly, a pillar of support I dreaded to shake. "Go meet her. I believe in you," Sarah encouraged, and with that, I slipped away from her reassuring presence, making my way toward the exit as the low hum of office life enveloped me once more. When I finally reached the cafe where we often met, my heart raced with hesitant anticipation. As I pushed through the door, the familiar aroma of coffee brushed against my senses, a comfort amidst my swirling thoughts. I spotted Holly seated at our usual table, her face creased with concern, and a palpable tension radiated from her. "What's up?" I asked as I took a seat across from her. Her eyes softened, but the urgency in her demeanor remained. "Emma, or rather, we have to talk about your meeting. Something came up that you need to know. The words hung between us like a fragile thread, fraying as I felt my heart begin to race again. What do you mean? It's about the new project the manager mentioned to you. There's something significant. She fidgeted with her sleeve, avoiding my gaze momentarily. I can't explain everything, but the person leading that project has been an issue in the past. His management style isn't exactly conducive for everyone. A cold wave of foreboding washed over me as I picked at the edges of her words. What are you saying, Holly? I'm saying that I've heard things, Emma. I don't want you to walk into that situation blindly. You may need to decide if it's worth it, she replied, her tone a blend of urgency and concern. The weight of her words pressed down upon me, rendering me momentarily speechless. The door that had seemed to open so beautifully now threatened to slam shut, revealing shadows I had yet to confront. As I processed the implications of Hollis' warning, my stomach churned a mix of anxiety and a flicker of fear. Would this new opportunity suffocate me? Would the very prospect of growth lead me back to the pitfalls of my past? Before I could respond, my phone buzzed for the third time today. I glanced down, my heart leaping as the screen flashed. It was a message from Richard. Please come see me again. I'd like to discuss something important. In that moment, I felt the pull of a harrowing decision. Would I pursue this new venture alongside a potentially toxic figure or heed Hollis' concerns and retreat? The answer felt just beyond my grasp, hovering tantalizingly in a distance I could not yet perceive. Emma. Hollis' voice pulled me back from my thoughts, but the truth beneath her words only intensified the chaos swirling inside. I realized I was standing at the edge of a precipice, and even the slightest misstep could propel me into the unknown. And as I looked at her, the weight of expectation settled heavily upon us both. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was about to unveil something that might change everything forever. With a heavy heart, I leaned back in my chair, the walls of the cafe closing around me in a suffocating embrace. The air was thick with the weight of Hollis' warning, and the anticipation of Richard's message buzzed anxiously in my pocket. I felt like a solitary figure poised on a tightrope, with the dizzying heights of opportunity on one side and the crushing depths of my fears on the other. Emma. Holly's voice broke through my spiraling thoughts, snapping me back to reality. You don't have to decide anything right now. Just think about it. Her intention was to comfort me, yet the uncertainty in her eyes mirrored my own turmoil. I know, I whispered, brushing my fingers over the cup of coffee, its heat a strange contrast to the chill pooling in my chest. But when the manager handed me that chance, it felt like like a door was finally opening after years of it being shut. But at what cost? Holly pressed gently. You have the potential, Emma, but if this project leads you to a toxic work environment, it'll drain you instead of elevate you. The thought gnawed at me, but the flickered memory of my previous failures, the paralyzing embarrassment, the doubt festering like an infected wound pushed me back toward the light. But what if I let fear decide for me again? I can't be that person anymore. Just as that last echo of determination whispered through my mind, the cafe door swung open, the clatter of rain against the pavement breaking the fragile spell of our conversation. A frigid gust swept through, and my gaze darted instinctively to the entrance, where a stranger entered, shaking off droplets, their dark coat clinging to their frame like armor. The figure shifted lightly, scanning the room, and for a heartbeat, I felt an unsettling familiarity wash over me. As they finally turned toward the counter, I caught a glimpse of their face, a flash of memory igniting within me like a match to kindling. Vince. I gasped, surprising both myself and Holly. Months had slipped by since I'd last seen him at that networking event where his charisma had both inspired and intimidated me in equal measure. Why was he here now? He pivoted at the sound of my voice, his expression morphing from mild surprise into a broad smile. Emma. It's good to see you. His warmth enveloped me, and in that moment, I felt an unexpected surge of hope push back against my trepidation that I gestured him over, needing the infusion of kindness amidst the turbulence of my mind. He slid into the chair next to me, exuding an energy that seemed to drain the clouds from my thoughts. "What are you up to these days?" His voice was bright, and his interest bolstered my confidence just a touch. "That I am trying to figure out my next steps, actually," I admitted, glancing at Holly, who remained observant, her expression shifting as she assessed our unexpected reunion. "Always a good plan figuring things out." "I've been juggling a few projects myself," he replied, his enthusiasm infectious. Then, as if sensing my uncertainty, he leaned in, lowering his voice. "But you know what's funny? I've learned that sometimes it takes a leap of faith. You just have to trust that something good will catch you." I took in his words, a flicker of inspiration igniting within me. "Leap of faith, huh? Easy for you to say," I replied jokingly, though the honesty beneath my jest resonated in the air. "Hey, I'm not saying it's always easy," he countered, a shadow of sincerity dimming his smile. "But every yes I've said has led me somewhere I needed to be. Even when I wasn't sure if it was the right move." His words spun around in my mind as I considered the decisions lying ahead: Richard, the project, Hollis' concerns. Each branch of this tangled decision tree felt both terrifying and liberating. "So, what made you reach out?" I asked, my curiosity deepening. "I wanted to reconnect and actually talk about something that, well, pertains to the industry we're in," he said cautiously. "But honestly, it's more for me than you. Just felt like I could use a little light in my life, otherwise drowning in all this work. The warmth returning to." My heart made me curious. "What do you mean?" He shifted slightly, tension curling at the corners of his mouth. "I'm exploring some opportunities that require a solid team, and I'd love for you to be a part of it. But I get it if you're a little occupied with what's coming." For a second, my world tilted again, merging Vince's unexpected proposition with the swirling uncertainty surrounding Richard. Was it a new opportunity or just another distraction? The lines blurred as hope wove into the fabric of my fear. I don't know, Vince. I'm kind of in a complicated spot right now." "Yeah, I get that. Just think about it, alright?" He met my gaze, a twinkle of understanding gleaming in his eyes. "Sometimes, paths branch off in ways we can't predict. Just be open to them." As he spoke, I felt energy electric beneath my skin. The world outside the cafe began to dim, and those moments of unforeseen kindness resonated like music. I smiled. "I will. Thanks, Vince." But just as the flicker of warmth enveloped me, my phone buzzed again, harder this time, jarring me with its insistence. Without thinking, I pulled it from my pocket, dread knotting my stomach as I glimpsed the screen. "Richard. It's urgent, Emma. Please come see me now." Before I could catch my breath, my heart raced, torn between the unfamiliar comfort of old friendships and the looming specter of unknown challenges. The taste of opportunity was about to shift, and I stood on the precipice once more. With both new hopes and old fears clawing at the door that had just begun to open, I sensed the beginning of an unraveling, deep and profound, hiding revelations just beneath the surface. And as I looked up from my phone and into Hollis' eyes, I knew the next steps I would take would redefine everything once again. The cafe felt smaller, the air thick with unexpressed tension. I could see the concern building in Hollis' eyes as I stared, wide-eyed, at the message on my screen. Richard's urgency seemed to scream across the vast gulf of uncertainty that separated us. My breath caught in my throat, suspended between past failures and potential triumphs. "Emma?" Hollis' voice trembled slightly, pulling me back from the edge of my spiraling thoughts. "Are you okay?" I don't know," I stammered, barely aware of how loud my heart was pounding against its cage. The warmth that Vince had ignited fled like a flickering flame in the face of a sudden gust. "Do you need to go?" she asked softly, her eyes darting back and forth between me and the door, as if expecting Richard to materialize from the shadows. The weight of the decision pressed down on me. "What if I make the wrong choice?" I whispered, the apprehension lacing my voice. "What if I go and it's everything I feared?" Or, Holly countered, her tone infused with quiet determination, "what if it's the opportunity you've been waiting for? You've poured so much into your career, Emma. You owe it to yourself to see it through. I exhaled shakily, the warmth returning in waves as I glanced at Vince, whose gaze was now fixed on me, an alarm of empathy in his expression. What do you think? I asked him. He wore a contemplative smile, but there was an edge to his assurance. Sometimes the biggest risks yield the highest rewards. No one can predict where this path might lead you. But Richard was a reality I didn't want to face yet again. He was a reminder of my past stumbles, of late nights drowning in self-doubt. The soaring hopes that Vince represented seemed to dangle right before me like honey, sweet and inviting, yet Richard's call felt like a spider web, sticky and ensnaring. Perhaps, I muttered, it's just another distraction. Or it could be a step towards something brighter. Vince leaned in, earnestness radiating from him. Just take a moment to weigh what you'd lose by not going. You don't have to make any decisions yet. Just promise you'll think about it. Hot frustration met cold dread within me. The battle raged, and I sat in stunned silence. Moments felt like hours as I weighed the fork in my path. Should I dive into Richard's world, pursue the painful lessons of my past, or leap into the unknown with Vince's enticing offer? As my mind wrestled with the turmoil of choices, snippets of laughter from the nearby tables threaded through me, reminding me of the joys I'd forgotten. Was this what life was supposed to feel like, a wild current pulling you under, a swirl of laughter and sea salt air? Instead, I felt like I was gasping for breath beneath the surface. Emma, Holly's steady voice broke through, no matter what happens, it'll be here for you. It broke through the fog, settling hope in the crevices of my heart. I glanced at Vince. Are you sure about this? What if I'm still not ready? I believe in you, he replied gently. You'll never know if you don't chase after what you want. In that moment, the choice felt infinite, clouded by fear yet buoyed by potential. Just as I prepared to articulate what I thought I might decide, my phone buzzed again, the persistent sound sending chills racing down my spine. Despite how heavy my heart felt, I reached for it, hesitating before I unlocked the screen. The words blurred as I read, Emma, come right now. If you want the project, your time is fading fast. Bile crept up my throat. He's applying pressure, I murmured, my hands trembling slightly as I fought the urge to crumble under the weight of his words. Then you know what you have to do, Vince said, his voice steady, his confidence surging through me like a lifeline. At least take the meeting. You can always choose to step back afterward. My pulse quickened, torn between the urgency in Richard's demand and the certainty radiating from Vince. Could I actually do this? The thought struck like a bolt of lightning, clarity amidst chaos. That I need to face this, I said, the words feeling both terrifying and liberating. Before I could linger on that resolution, Holly caught my gaze, a mixture of pride and concern etched on her features. Just remember to stay true to yourself, Emma. Don't lose sight of what you want. Gripping my phone tightly, I felt the fissures of doubt begin to fade, even as the anxiety remained. Right. I'm going to talk to Richard. As I rose from my chair, a chill ran through me, entangling itself with the thread of hope weaving tighter around my heart. I glanced down at my phone one last time, nerves and excitement mingling in a curious dance. With every step toward Richard's office, apprehension clawed at my insides, but the warmth of Vince's encouraging presence propelled me forward. If he believed I could harness the storm inside me, then surely I owed it to myself to try. But just before I reached the cafe entrance, my phone buzzed yet again, jolting me in my stride. I gazed down and felt my breath hitch once more at the incoming message. Richard had sent something new, this to me, a photo that dropped like a stone into the still waters of my mind. The image was of a project, one I had thought long gone. And beside it was a name, my name, intertwined with a hidden truth I had yet to uncover. Nothing could prepare me for the tidal wave of emotion rushing through me, fear mingling with disbelief. What was this revelation? I felt a tempest gather, both exhilarating and terrifying, and I realized I had mere moments to decide how to respond to the chaos swirling around me. Would I dive headfirst into a past I couldn't outrun, or would I finally claim the future waiting for me? The cold air hit me like a bucket of ice as I stepped outside, my resolve wavering with each breath. My fingers trembled, hovering over the screen as I read the words Richard sent along with the Imagia project that used to feel like a lifeline now felt like a noose tightening around my neck. It was a collaboration I had poured everything into, only to watch it slip through my fingers, a fading memory of dreams dashed against harsh realities. Suddenly, a pair of hands startled me out of my thoughts. "Emma! There you are!" A familiar voice broke through the haze of anxiety. It was Daniel, a colleague who had long been a supportive presence during my darker days. "Hey, Daniel," I managed to reply, forcing a smile through the storm brewing within me. "What brings you here?" He looked concerned, the warmth in his brown eyes a soothing balm against my fears. "I just finished a meeting nearby and thought I'd check in." "You look a bit." His voice trailed off, uncertainty painted across his face as he searched for the right words. "Everything okay? Just grappling with a tough decision," I admitted, the honesty spilling out before I could rein it in. "It's complicated." He nodded, his expression softening. The kindness he bore seemed to unravel the tension within me, if only for a moment. "You know I'm always here if you want to talk. Your strength has inspired a lot of us. Whatever this is, I'm sure you'll handle it." "Thank you," I said, touched. "That means a lot." I could feel the faintest flicker of hope igniting within me, the way the horizon glows at dawn before thrusting the sun into the sky. But beneath the comfort, another dark thought slithered into my mind: what if I couldn't handle it? The impending confrontation with Richard loomed larger than life, and I could practically feel the weight of my insecurities pressing down on me. "Listen," Daniel said, his voice stronger now, "whatever happens with Richard, don't forget why you started this journey. Remember your passion, what drove you to create in the first place. You've worked too hard to let fear take over now." I nodded, feeling tears prick at the corners of my eyes. It was a fragile moment, but the warmth in my chest blossomed, fueled by Daniel's faith in me. I stopped, unsure if I was ready to admit my fears, or if I could take the leap to confess the riptide of doubt threatening to pull me under. "I'm just scared." Daniel took a step closer, arching an eyebrow. "Scared of what? Failure? Or maybe success, maybe both," I whispered, feeling the vulnerability envelop me like a shroud. "What if I go back and it all crashes again, or what if it leads to something completely new?" He raised a finger, almost mischievously. "You've always surprised yourself, Emma. Remember that time you thought you'd never make that presentation, and then you killed it? You have a way of reinventing your narrative." His words floated around me, and I recalled the exhilaration those moments had brought. Each success, like a drop of rain nurturing seeds of potential that lay dormant within. Perhaps that flicker of hope inside me wasn't entirely extinguished. "You'll think about it," I finally said, feeling a reluctant smile creep onto my lips. "But right now, I should face Richard." "You'll be fine," he assured me. "And remember, he'll be cheering for you from the sidelines. Just go in there and show him who you are." With a deep breath, I stepped away from Daniel, feeling lighter even as the weight of my impending confrontation loomed before me. As I turned toward Richard's office, the cold air once again took residence around me, though I found comfort in the warmth of Daniel's encouragement nestling in my heart. The walk began like a slow crawl, every step echoing the thud of uncertainty in my chest. Suddenly, my phone buzzed again, a fresh message emerging from the shadows. This time, it wasn't Richard's name that glared at me but a surprise: Vince. A mix of longing and anxiety swelled within me. What could he possibly say now? With trembling fingers, I opened the message, the weight of its potential consuming me. "Thinking of you. Remember, you are stronger than you know. No matter what happens today, you have my support." My heart swelled, warmth chasing away the chill enveloping me. In that fleeting moment, I felt anchored against the storm of tomorrow. It reminded me that I wasn't in this alone, but just before my feet crossed the threshold into Richard's domain, a sudden realization hit. I had no way of knowing what that message from Richard truly meant. The hours spent battling demons of the past might just come crashing down with him once more. What did the project really entail? What undiscovered secrets did it hold? Horrifically, the fear wrapped tighter around me like an anaconda, squeezing out any final shreds of confidence as I stood before the door. It swung open before I could even touch the handle, and there stood Richard, his expression unreadable. "Emma," he said, his voice a controlled measure of cheer and challenge intertwined. "Glad you could make it. We need to talk." The world around me narrowed to just the two of us, but in that instant, clarity slipped through my fingers like sand. My heart raced, but as I inhaled deeply, I felt something stir. Resolve began to rise. Would this be just another failure, or could it possibly become a breath of triumph? And then I remembered the project wasn't just about the job, it was about reclaiming a part of myself that I had shied away from. Whatever lay ahead, I would meet it head-on, or I would walk away knowing I gave it my all. But as Richard stepped aside, beckoning me into the unknown, I couldn't shake the feeling that a storm was about to break. Little did I know, the truth lurking behind those doors was about to shift my world once again. The moment I stepped into Richard's office, the atmosphere felt electric, charged with unsaid words swirling in the air like fallen leaves caught in a gust of wind. I grasped the edge of the table, grounding myself as Richard gestured toward a chair. My pulse thrummed loudly in my ears, drowning out everything but the blur of anticipation and dread mingling within me. He settled into his own chair, fingers intertwined, eyeing me with that familiar mix of skepticism and guarded hope. "I appreciate you coming by," he began, his tone polished yet edged with something more. "I know your feelings about our collaboration. But I think it's crucial we discuss a potential direction I have in mind." I forced a shaky breath into my lungs, drawing on the fragments of hope woven into my day. "I've thought a lot about it, Richard. I understand what's at stake here." The words felt slippery, struggling to hold their weight as I met his gaze. "You've thrown yourself into this project, Emma," he replied, leaning in subtly, an intensity igniting behind his cold exterior. "But the last presentation was far from cohesive. I need to see a change. If it flops again, we might lose funding, and people will start asking questions." A clenched fist formed in my chest. Those words seemed to scrape against an old wound, raw and festering. "You think I don't know that?" I shot back, my voice steadier than I felt. The weight of his judgments made me want to curl inward, but I couldn't succumb, not now. "What are you proposing?" Richard paused, the flicker of something behind his eyes fear, perhaps before he exhaled slowly. "I want you back in the lead. You need to rally the team and take charge. We can't afford to let this fizzle out, it's too important." We need to inspire confidence. That he was asking a lot, but the challenge sparked something inside me. I could feel the energy of Daniel's encouragement still thrumming within me, and despite myself, a flicker of ambition ignited in my heart. "You really think I can do it?" I asked, somewhat incredulously. "You were hardly convinced the first time was too safe. I need you to take risks. Channel the passion you've always had." He waved a hand, dismissing the past. "I want to see what you can create when the stakes are high, high stakes." The phrase sent a shiver down my spine. Did he really believe I could rise beyond the smog of my fears? And if I fail again? I pressed, desperately needing to understand the exact depth of the cliff he wanted me to plummet from. "Then we adapt. But you have something we can work with, Emma." There it was again, the belief laced through his words. I had known Richard for years, the number of times he had chosen to gamble on me remained scant. Yet here he was, presenting an opportunity that felt treacherous and thrilling all at once. Daniel's words replayed in my mind, a soothing incantation against the tide of doubt surging within. Had I not already faced the specter of failure? What greater risk was there than not standing up at all? "I'll do it," I finally said, certainty grounding me like roots pressing into soil. "But I need to make some changes. We need a new approach." Richard's eyebrows lifted, surprise mingling with something that resembled respect. "All right," he said slowly. "Let's hear what you've got." The conversation shifted, my nerves morphing into an exhilarating rush as we discussed ideas, strategies. The pulse of the vision ID held tightly with each word. I felt embers igniting my spirit anew. This was the breath of life I needed, the chance to reclaim my narrative. As the meeting drew to a close, Richard leaned back, crossing his arms with a faint smile creeping onto his lips. "I'm looking forward to seeing where this goes. Flushed with adrenaline, I gathered my things, convinced that maybe for once, I had started to steer my fate rather than face it head-on like a deer caught in headlights. I exited the office, feeling as if I had emerged from a heavy fog, bits of light filtering through the grays, but as I turned the corner, exuberance ebbing into cautious optimism, I felt my phone buzz again, the familiar tremor jolting me back into fear. Time seemed to still as I pulled it out, my heart racing with both eagerness and dread. It was a message from Vince, this time more urgent. "Emma, we need to talk. Something about the project, it's serious." A knot formed in my stomach, the unsettling chill of his words wrapping around me. What could possibly be serious? Had Richard shared something with him? Was there more to this project than I realized? A seed of doubt began to take root once more as I stared at the screen, the world shifting around me. No sooner had I opened the message than a figure appeared at the end of the hallway, a shadow materializing from the light. It was Daniel, his expression a mixture of concern and urgency. "Emma. I've been looking for you. I heard some things about Richard and your project." My breath caught in my throat. What did he mean? Were the walls I had so carefully erected about to come crumbling down? I raised my eyes to meet his, fear and hope colliding in an invisible storm as I braced myself for whatever awaited in the revelations that lay ahead. The moment Daniel approached, a storm of emotions flooded through me like the waves of a tempest crashing on the shore. "What things? What do you know?" The urgency in my voice felt raw and exposed, as if peeling back layers of vulnerability I'd only just begun to understand. "Just rumors," he said cautiously, the weight of his words hanging heavily in the air. "People are saying Richard is looking for someone to blame if the project doesn't succeed. They suspect he's hoping to push you out if it doesn't go well." A chill swept through me, snaking up my spine. He wouldn't nod after what we just discussed. But as soon as the words left my mouth, I felt the crack within the fortress of denial I had so painstakingly built. Richard's past criticisms flickered in my mind, illuminating the shadows of doubt. Had I allowed myself to forget that he thrived in chaos, that he could be as hollow as a gnarled tree, cracked and lifeless? "Emma, you have to be careful," Daniel urged, concern softening his tone. "This isn't just about the project, it's about your safety, your career, your future. You deserve to stand in the light, not be thrown to the wolves." The insistence of his words struck a chord within me, a deep longing to untether myself from fear and the looming specter of Richard's manipulation. I had fought to reclaim my narrative, to step up and embrace risk, but was this risk swallowing me whole? The prospect of once again being caught in the whirlwind of failure felt suffocating. "What do I do?" I whispered, feeling raw and exposed. The room around me seemed to close in, shadows lengthening as uncertainty threatened to consume me whole. "Consider an alternative path," he added gently. "Vince offered you a chance, didn't he? You have options beyond Richard, and they might be safer. You could work with someone who believes in you." His words washed over me like cool water, the sensation both nurturing and dangerous. The ghost of my previous failures loomed large, each stumble I'd taken echoing in the recesses of my mind, a cacophony of not enough and never again. But within that heaviness, sparked a flicker of Clarissa realization so vibrant that it almost broke through the fog. "Maybe I don't have to stay." The thought crept in, tentative yet persistent, like a flower pushing through the cracked pavement. Daniel's expression brightened, eyes lighting up with encouragement. "Exactly. You owe it to yourself to seek out what brings you joy and purpose. The project may mean well, but don't let it pull you into a pit. Know your worth, Emma." His resolve reverberated through me, and I grappled with the myriad of choices that lay sprawled across my mind like an intricate tapestry woven with uncertainty and hope. "You're right," I breathed, my heart racing as I felt the threads of possibility intertwining around my fingers. "I'll talk to Vince. I need to see if there's a place for me outside of Richard's influence." And just like that, the flicker of hope transitioned into a flame, ignited by conviction and the warm embrace of friendship. I stepped toward my future, shedding the weight of fear and uncertainty, inhaling deeply as if tasting the sweetness of possibility for the first time. "I'll keep you posted," I promised as I entered the world beyond the haze of judgment, heart aligned with the winds of change that swirled around me. Daniels made a genuine gesture that felt like a talisman against the unknown. We exchanged a final nod of assurance before I turned on my heel, heading toward the cafe once more, the sound of my footsteps echoing with newfound determination. Each step was a pledge to reclaim my power, every moment rekindling the spark I had feared might be extinguished forever in the darkness of doubt. As I entered the cafe, the aroma of coffee and warm pastries enveloped me, grounding me within the present. And there he was. Vince sat at our usual table, wearing that signature half-smile that always made me feel like everything might just work out if I dared to believe. Taking a deep breath, I approached, fueled by promise and guarded optimism. "Hi," I greeted, my voice steady as I stifled the whirlwind inside. "I think we need to talk." Vince looked up, his eyes brightening with burgeoning hope. "About the project?" he asked, an eager glint that illuminated his expression. "Yes," I nodded, my heart racing with truth. "But more importantly, about taking the chance on something that can lift me up, not drag me down. I want to explore the possibilities that align with who I am and what I believe I am." As I laid it all out, my fears, my recent revelations, and the tumultuous winds pulling at my sail, leaned forward, his enthusiasm evident. "This is wonderful, Emma. You're taking control of your narrative." The conversation poured forth between us like an unbroken stream, warm and rich, a life-giving current carrying my aspirations. And with every moment, every word exchanged, a floodgate of potential opened, exposing both of us to the breadth of opportunity waiting just beyond the horizon. As our thoughts intertwined, I felt the last remnants of doubt fade. It wasn't just about protecting my career anymore, it was about rediscovering the passion and strength I longed to embrace, a vision painting clarity upon the canvas of my future. When the meeting concluded, as laughter drifted around us and the world outside the cafe danced with vibrancy, I felt an undercurrent of excitement stir within, a reminder that the potential to reclaim my power had always lain within my grasp, waiting for the moment I would seek it out. And as I caught his gaze again, there came a moment of stillness, a shared understanding that we both stood on the precipice of reinvention. "Ready?" I asked, heart swelling with meteor-like ambition. "Ready, always," he replied, the conviction glowing in his eyes. And as the winds of change swirled around us, I felt a new beginning unfurl, a tender seed in full bloom ready to reach for the sun. That day, everything shifted as I grasped the edges of my newfound strength, the clarity of purpose ringing in my ears. The world awaited beyond the horizon, and it felt like I'd finally found my footing again, ready to dance amidst the uncertainty, my heart echoing a whispered promise: "Maybe this time, I won't let fear choose me."